We're down at Trapezium Gallery today to talk to Pauline and Ken, the founders of Trapezium Gallery. And the first thing I'd sort of like to ask you really is, you know, like how did you get the idea to start the gallery?
Okay, shall I answer this one? It was my idea, I have to say. It was a bit of a crazy idea. We were Ken, I, and a lady called Anne. We were all students together at Bradford College, and we decided we wanted to do exhibitions of our work. So we held one in Keighley, an empty shop there, an East Street Arts property there, which is now Keighley Creative Space. So we held an exhibition there, and then we went to East Street Arts and said we'd like to do another one, and can we have some space in Bradford? And they gave us the opportunity to have one in Costa, the old Costa,
right,
which is just 2 doors up from here. And we did that. And I remember we went to Sunbridge Wells for a drink after one of the days we were open. And I said to Ken, I know what we should do. We should hold these, you know, all the time. We should keep doing it, and then get other people to come in and do exhibitions.
Right.
And I thought he'd say, "Oh, don't be stupid, you know, shut up," like he does. But he didn't. He said, "Oh, all right then. How could we do that?" So that's what we did. Basically, we asked East Street Arts for another space because they'd already rented that one out. So we got a shop just down Kirkgate, further down the street, a little space down there, which is now a nail bar, and we set up in there, didn't we?
We did.
We started off with some, we got a small pot of money from a council initiative called Bubble Up, and we did some print workshops, and we also did our first exhibition at the same time. We did an open call for work from people we knew,
Mm-hmm.
and we did our first exhibition, Water, Structure and Life. That was in September 2018.
Right.
And it started there.
Right. So yeah. So about three years ago.
About 3 years ago, yeah.
And why did you the name Trapezium, which I found an interesting name? How did that come about?
Well, as we had a lot of discussions, finding a name was difficult. One of the common things for art galleries is the white cube. So we wanted to play about with that a bit in terms of a geometric shape. We didn't want to be a traditional white cube as such. And the gallery space we had at number 46 was vaguely trapezium shaped. So somebody suggested it, it seemed to make sense.
Right.
And we've been trapezium ever since.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was sort of symbolic of the idea that we wanted to get away from the traditional art gallery, basically.
And
we wanted to be different.
And you sort of, is that like the white cube sort of notion? You know, that's how you see the existing sort of gallery provision. Yeah. You see it in that.
There was a famous article written, I can't remember who it was written by now, in the 70s, that said, you know, art galleries were in essence white cubes, and you know that represented the elite. It represented spiritual, it away from the everyday experience of people. It was, you know, for the sort of a sign of privilege and being set apart from normal everyday life and people. So we wanted to get away from that, basically.
So you would see the Trapezium Gallery then as more like it's introducing like a new set of participants, people bringing the art in. Where do you draw the people who are represented here? You've had about 17 exhibitions.
Yeah.
Now, how have you found those exhibitors? How did they come to you?
To a large extent, it's word of mouth. It's people knowing we're here, and we're open to anybody suggesting what they would like to put on. So, you know, while we personally have a fine art background and we want to show fine art,
Mm-hmm.
we're quite open to all sorts of other options, all sorts of cultural heritage information or photography or basically anything.
Right.
Anything we think that is worth being shown to people of Bradford.
In terms of the exhibitions that you've had so far, then it's like 17's that's a pretty good That's a pretty
I
good
can't quite believe that.
innings, you know, and plus the online stuff, which we haven't sort of talk about later on. Have there been any sort of like points in the exhibitors where you thought that this is, you know, these ideas, these contributions that surprise you? Have you any like surprises, good surprises, bad surprises in the stuff you've shown out?
Well, yes, I think yes. Because I said we started off from the fine art point of view, and yourselves being Bradford came along, which was not something we ever thought that's what we wanted to do, but that was a huge success. And that's led on to other musical, collections. So quite often we find that people suggest things we'd never have thought of, which have been a hit and have been very successful. So we learn as we go along.
Because I found, you know, like speaking for myself, that your the way you welcomed the ideas and invite, it's very open to participation from people from not particularly from traditional art backgrounds, but with interesting things to show, to talk about paintings, like photographs, etc. And I found, like having dealt with other institutions, this has been like how I'd always envisioned art should be, like presented and curated and seen, it's a great thing.
Well, we do. I mean, we have a fine art background, but whatever that means. I mean, but basically, I fell into it, and we both studied around doing full-time jobs. So I wouldn't say, even though we sort of have a fine art background, it's not a traditional fine art background. I mean, Bradford College was quite innovative, and it was it's part of the art school culture, not university or culture really. It's art school rather than. So it sort of did encourage a lot of thinking for yourself, thinking outside the box. Welcoming things that wouldn't necessarily class as art pursuits. There was always a distinction between high culture and low culture, and sort of where does that meet? And I think some of the greatest art movements have been about low culture being raised up to a level of the same level as say high culture or whatever. So we were encouraged to do that, to mix it up, and that no art is more special than any other art sort of thing, and that you can have all sorts of creative pursuits that can all come together and be just as valuable. Like I like doing textiles. Well, that's not traditional fine art really, but it's it's getting more of it's coming back on the scene a lot more now because of people moving away from more traditional things and valuing where these pursuits came from.
There was, just because this is being sort of made in 2021, there was a 2-year interlude, and you went online for best part of 18 months. How did you find that?
That was interesting. We wanted to do something. We didn't want to just sit here and do nothing. So we already had a website. So we thought we'd invite people to submit work. We wanted to keep it basically local Bradford people, but we didn't want it to be, you didn't have to pass a submission. So basically anybody who submitted work would go in there. So we had open galleries on a monthly basis, and we got to find a lot of very creative people, some of which we offered individual galleries to showcase more of their work. And it's been a really good thing in that we've found lots of creative people to expand into exhibitions. Actually, now we're back in the physical space. So no, it was a very good experience. We hope to continue it, but
it's like a hybrid of the physical and the virtual. Well, at this moment in time, then, because we're sort of in the sort of mid Bradford City of Culture sort of process, 2025. So that sort of period. What do you think the most important thing for you as a gallery to be doing during this period is? Have you got any sort of priorities? How do you see it sort of moving forward in the sort of next 4 or 5 years?
Well, I mean, the way we work, we sort of we run by charging people a small fee to exhibit with us. What we would really like to do is be able to waive those fees, so we can do a number of free exhibitions a year for people who can't afford to do it, maybe, or people who are generally marginalised and need more support to exhibit their work. We'd like to do more of those. So I think in the next 4 or 5 years, probably getting some funding so that we can do more of that. But just carry on finding new and inventive things to show, really.
Yeah,
Would you agree?
yes, and to an extent, we've grown organically.
Yeah.
The way we've changed hasn't been a case of we had a plan of this is what we're going to do. It's what's come to us and we've thought that's a good idea and we've expanded on those ideas.
Yeah.
So I hope that will continue, that we'll find new things to do and which will improve what we can offer.
Yeah, we are quite spontaneous. I mean, you know, I think we deliberately don't try and plan too far in the future. You know, we weigh up each thing. You know, I mean, for instance, we could become a charity, but then we lose a lot of control over what we do. You know, we'd have to bring other people in. I think, I think you're right. It's sort of, let's see what happens this week. Let's see.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
And certainly you mentioned 2025 bid. That potentially brings money in. That gives us an opportunity to look for new things where we would have an opportunity to be able to fund it.
Yeah.
So those things will offer us opportunities, I hope.
How could individuals who might want to support the gallery, what sort of things could they do?
come and visit us, really. Come and see what we've got on. Come back, on a regular basis. We try and, publicise each exhibition we do. So, regular visits.
Right.
Really.
Yeah, I think the more people we get in, the more we get known. And that obviously helps in terms of our profile and potentially getting funding in the future and people wanting to help us. So, come in and see the art is all we're really asking.
Right, to visit. But what I've noticed is because you are in employment, you've got other commitments. It's so sometimes the actual facility may be only open 3 days a week. Would you like it to open like 7 days a week if possible? If you had the people to help do that,
yeah. Oh, if we get volunteers who can help out, that would be fabulous. Yes.
Yeah. So that for people watching this, that might be a way that they could think, oh yeah, we'd like to see that grow up.
Yeah.
Put some time aside to come and man the gallery and staff the gallery, man and woman the gallery. Yeah.
Well, it started off. There were 4 of us that sort of started it off. 3 of us who were students, and also Steve, who's was involved with East Street Arts. But we've got lots of volunteers now that help out, that open the gallery when we're not here.
Mm-hmm.
That do things like our press releases. Well, you're involved. We think of you as being involved with the organisation now. Mm-hmm. You're not particularly interested in the gallery side of it, but we would. One of the ways we'd quite like to expand is having some sort of studio space upstairs so people can come in and actually work here.
Yeah.
It's just getting people more and more involved that have an interest in art or.
But there are the sort of reason I asked that question, because like the actual running of a gallery, there are lots of different aspects to it. I think a lot of people just think a gallery somewhere you walk in and look at pictures, go out. But like the model that you've set up, it's like an independent community-based gallery, right? Requires, I think, like a broader participation really. So it's like if people know that you're asking for that type of input, they might say, well, it's something we could contribute to.
Yeah, I mean, we would always welcome anybody who wants to get involved, and we will. Everybody has different skills. We'll try and make use of those skills they have. For example, we've got somebody who volunteers and helps with press release. They have an experience of. So yes, we would value anybody who would do that. And equally, if there's any businesses out there who want to be able, who feel that we're contributing something to Bradford, we'll happily take their money. Yes.
Fantastic. Yeah.
But when I said you lot are involved, I meant.
You meant here.
Yes.
I suppose.
Are you getting yourself?
This is Being Bradford. Part of.
Oh.
Go on then, Johna.
Go on then, what are you going to say?
What was the question?
I can't remember.
But just about expanding like your participation really and getting other people who might not see, like they might think of a gallery. Yeah.
I'd say this is. I mean, when I love being down there. You know, these two were a massive part of it. I don't like naming names. You know.
They've already named names.
Guess they don't start getting a bit now.
Come on.
I'm uncomfortable around art installations. I don't know. When I go to a place like Cartwright and stuff like that, I don't feel engaged by it, or I feel kind of detached from it. I can sort of engage in some of the stuff that's on the walls, but it doesn't feel part of me. Or it's not my culture. I don't feel welcome to a certain degree. You know, like I say, I associate art with posh people.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem to be about people like me. But I've got no art background, even though I've done art at college. This to me, I think it's what you were saying as well. That this is how art should be presented to people like us. It feels more homely. It feels more community based. They're doing it for the right reasons, and it's not about making money.
No.
Yeah, everything in this world's about making money. You look at the state of the planet. You know, so we need to change the way, we need different ideas about how we conduct ourselves.
We've always been the what we're on. This is why we're in the city centre and we're on a shopping street, an empty shop. Is that ordinary people going about, just walking past, can come in for 10 minutes, have a look around. Yeah. Even here though, we get the problem. People get to the doorstep, look in, have a look around, and walk away because they think this is an art gallery. It's not for me.
Yeah.
But once we get people in, we get them coming back.
That's right.
We need to change that perspective. It puts people off. Maybe it's a confidence thing, not having the confidence, whether they've got any ability in art or whether they understand art or anything related to art. You know, maybe it feels like their opinions have never been valued. They've heard them before. But, you're just a working class kid. What do you know about art? Well, what does people who run a big gallery know about art? You know, they don't know the artists in a lot of places. They've got plenty of comments about it. But anyway, forget about that. This is about what we do.
But it's also about appropriation, isn't it? Because, most artists were poverty stricken in their lifetime.
That's right.
It's people taking their art after when they've died and making lots of money from it.
Yeah, statues.
Most artists are people that just want to say something about the fact that things aren't quite right, or they don't feel right about certain things, or they want to express something that they're finding difficult, grief or sadness or anger. Most artists, when you read about their lives, they're really nice, ordinary, expressive people. It's the art world that's a mess.
I'm just wondering if that's why they buy all the paintings. If all these people have got important messages, it feels funny that a lot of them are poor, come from poor background. A lot of the establishment or whatever not that particularly interested in them until they sort of like produce them, or maybe they die, and then they buy all the work and stop everybody else from seeing it.
Yeah.
So they're killing the message.
Of course, I'm input into it. Yeah.
Be inclusive, not exclusive.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was thinking about what you said about the traditional art galleries. I mean, that's the danger of being funded. That's what I was trying to say earlier about. We would like to get a grant, in order to be able to show more free exhibitions, but then we have to answer to the people that give us the money, which is a bit what they're.
Well, yeah.
And then, those sort of institutions, they tend to choose people to run them who have a certain art background. It's all part of that hierarchical structure. I mean, it's basically, do we stay on a shoestring and do exactly what we want, or have loads of money
and restrictions?
Can you get money without losing the control?
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, our current model is sustainable. We make enough money. The money that we charge for exhibitions gives us enough spare to offer a few free exhibitions. Yeah, so we're sustainable as we are. But obviously, any additional we get, we can improve the facilities. We can offer more, not charge artists or even subsidise them to produce work. So, as I say, it's like you say, donations. People have donated money to us in the past, a £5 here, a £5 there. That all helps. But equally, if we could get businesses to, give us a couple of £100 a year, that would make a huge. The budget we're on is very, very small.
Yeah.
So any amount of money would help. And there's no reason why that shouldn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
But then we don't lose the control. As we said before, any funding, you have to justify why you're doing it and what you're doing it, and it comes with conditions.
At the moment,
At
may
the
change.
moment,
Yeah.
It's usually not to benefit.
Yeah.
You want to keep people quiet, or
But that's
sanitised world.
There are very few of us running this, and if we were to get a grant, or a lot of the grant, there would be a lot of work just in managing the grant and all the feedback, all the work and stuff to do it, that would take us away from actually running the gallery.
Right. Yeah.
So
There's pros and cons in
swings and
it.
roundabouts on
It's
getting grants.
it's a dilemma of like when you want to scale things up. I mean, at the moment you're in this building. Ideally, would you like a building this sort of size, or would you like a different location? It's having like access to that, like to your optimum vision of what you're looking for, and having that actually supported by
We don't know what the optimum would be.
We don't really think like that. We sort of, because we're dependent on the shopping centre giving us a shop, we basically just get what we're given. I mean, when we moved out of the little space down there, I remember being in a right panic and, I don't want to leave, I don't like that new place. But actually, I'm very fond of this now, and I'd be really upset if we had to leave here. So it's always what they'll give us, really, so we have to bear that in mind.
This place created other opportunities, so although we didn't want to move and it was being chucked out of our old space, it gave us something extra.
Yeah, but I do like the bit upstairs. I've come to really value that bit upstairs. I think we could really do something. Really use that up there for doing workshops, and Cara would like to do some printing workshops, wouldn't she? And I quite like to do some printing, do some work up there, come in and make a mess with paints and inks and things, and get other people. Maybe if you need to do your framing, you've got a space up there where you can use it, or have meetings and all sorts of things it could be used for. I'd really like to have lots of people coming in here all the time, just even if they just come in and have a coffee on the sofas down the back, or just a bit of a hub, because I think artists lead quite an isolated life. It's quite it can be quite a lonely place to be, being an artist. So
It's self-indulgent, not self-indulgent, probably not the right word, but when you're intensely passionate about something creative, it's like self-isolation. You put all your effort into it, so
it can be quite isolating, but it can be it can be quite demotivating as well. I think when you can meet other artists, and even if it's just for a short space of time, to say, what are you up to, or I'm thinking of doing this, I think that can be quite supportive and helpful.
When you get loads of creative minds as well, it creates new ideas.
Yes,
That's the best idea, because you're all learning off of each other. So you can get stuck in your own repetition or whatever you want. And then you meet somebody else and, why have you thought of that? And then bang, it sets up an whole new avenue. So it's important to bring it.
It's important to have a space where artists can meet like that, and that's what we like
and have
to
the freedom to say what they really want. Going back to this place, I think it's vital to Bradford actually now. Having been involved and see what happened, it feels. I can't imagine Bradford without this place. Really, it just feels like you can walk in.
I agree with you entirely.
Put your feet up, have a cup of tea. It feels welcoming.
Definitely.
I've only met Ken. What's your name again?
Just 10 minutes ago.
I'm called June.
Chris and June. Is that you?
I mean, I think there's several aspects of that. In terms of size, this is ideal for what we want now. There are loads of things we could consider doing, but we'd need more people to do it. So the size of space will depend on how many people are involved.
Right.
Then you've got location and whether it's temporary or permanent. This is ideal. It's on a busy street. You don't have to be going out looking for art to find us. But it's a temporary space. To an extent, I quite like that. But to get a permanent space, the cost of that would be such. Potentially would be moved out the city centre. So I think, practically speaking, temporary spaces are the only way we can be where we want to be, which is in the city centre. And I'm quite happy with that. I'm quite happy with the fact we're using temporary spaces. We might have to move occasionally, do a bit of painting. but using-
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I agree.
Finally, then, if I could ask Pauline firstly, and then Johna, if you could recommend three things that you found really useful in your lives as films, books, pieces of music that really helped sort of shape your ideas about things in the world that we live in. What might they be?
Right. Well, the first thing was the book that influenced the way we set up the gallery space here. I mean, much has been written about gallery spaces, but this was sort of an iconic book in the 70s called The White Cube, the Ideology of the Gallery Space, which talked about how art galleries have become a rarefied environment, you know, for the privileged, for the elite, and how there's a huge movement these days to break that down. So that might be by having the art arranged in a different way. It might be different sized galleries. It might even, I mean, the whole movement of public space art as well has come out of that. So it's, you know, where art is taken out of the gallery space and put, you know, in the public space outside. All that sort of movement. So that book had an influence on how I saw art galleries being set up. As far as thinking, you know, as far as living and thinking is concerned, I also talked about Simone de Beauvoir the other day. Not just her feminist books, not just The Second Sex, but her autobiographies and some of her novels. Some of her novels are just so mind-blowing. She had a real ability to see how relationships between people can become very unequal. In her case, you know, sort of taken over by the men in her world, the men in her life, but also relationships with her mother and her sisters, and it's a way of writing that I really like. So people aren't just talking about ideas in a sort of way that you can't access. They're written as stories, so you see imaginary characters living out these particular situations, say the relationship between a husband and a wife, where the husband's having an affair, you know, and how the wife deals with that. She's not just talking about how she feels, she's set it as a novel, and I find that sometimes setting ideas rather than just being philosophy or a theory book, they become a story, they become a narrative, and you can see the ideas coming out in that. You can actually, you think about it with a different part of your brain. So instead of just thinking about an idea, you're actually feeling, you know, you're empathizing with the characters in that, which I think is much more powerful, which is a similar thing to what we're talking about the gallery space, really. You're bringing it down to being much more visceral so that people can access, you know. So they were the two that I mentioned last week, which I've just enlarged on a bit. That I've had a real influence.
How about you, Johna?
Three things. I think the Sex Pistols on a musical front was very important to me. Up until that point, I think working class people's lives was mapped out for them. You know, we all knew we were going to end up in some warehouse somewhere doing what his dads have done, you know. Suddenly a band's coming along and offering different options to life. You know, I want to be me. You know, then no one at school told me I was allowed to be me. You know, and you know, and if you'd never heard that before, you know, you was going to follow what you've been taught. That was a big opening my mind thought to thinking about, can I really be me? And, you know, when I went to see the band and I was lucky enough to meet them and stuff like that, you know, that had a massive impact on me as a working class kid, because I realised I couldn't be me. You know, they were singing about anarchy and stuff like that. I mean, I didn't interpret it as anarchy as in smashing things up just for the sake of it. I thought of anarchy as looking after what's good for me. was like personal anarchy. It was like being the person you want to be, not the person that somebody else wants you to be. You know, how many other bands, is there any other bands that talk about stuff like that? You know, to me, that's revolutionary, not just in terms of people, but in terms of thought. You know, so that was very powerful, and a lot of working class people went on to live the lives that wouldn't even thought of until that point. Yeah. So from a musical point of view, I think the Sex Pistols was a massive inspirational point for me. Other things, my favourite film is probably Thunder Rock. Thunder Rock, it's a very little known film by the Bolton brothers. It's Michael Redgrave, who I kind of like. Basically, it's about a news journalist who's reporting in the rise of fascism in Europe, and he's sending these reports back, and they're getting watered down to the British public. And he comes back to confront them, and it results in him leaving the newspaper. Decides to write a book of his own, and he goes on tour around the UK promoting what he's actually seen, not what the newspapers are saying. Nobody takes any notice of that, so he loses faith with humanity, gets a job, goes, lives on a lighthouse in America. And while he's there, he finds a book with all the passengers. There's a plaque to it, a ship that's sunk outside. Basically, it's loads of people from Europe who are running away from something. The book dies, all these people lose their lives, and he finds the passenger list, and he creates all these people in his mind. And the captains, it creates the captain and all that, and he goes through the life stories, and he uses that as a way to re-engage. I think that it would have been really good if the film would have followed on a bit longer to take where he went afterwards, but it kind of ends when he says to the characters he's created in his mind that he's going to re-engage back with humanity again, because they'd all say, well, what, you're running away like us.
Right.
You know, I just found it a really fascinating film on so many levels, and you know, and it's a film I continue to watch to this day. I probably watch it more than anyone else. The third thing I would say, seditionary clothing. There's quite a lot of controversy with this one, really, because there's a contradiction. You know, I really believed in the punk ethics, the DIY thing, and all that. It wasn't about, but you've got seditionaries, you know, Vivienne Westwood stuff. The clothes were absolutely fantastic. When I wore them, I actually felt so confident wearing them. But you know, they're expensive clothes. You know, it clashed with the DIY culture of punk rock, really. You know, because these trousers were like 25. It was a week's wage, basically. I used to get 35 quid back then working. You know, a pair of bondage trousers were like 25, 35 quid. So you know, so it's a big clash. But I was fascinated in the clothes. I mean, I didn't buy too many of them brand new because I didn't really have the money. I did buy odd bits and bats. Luckily, I was lucky enough to meet when at the end of the punk thing, '79, when it kind of pitted out and people started looking for something new. I managed to pick up a load of pieces off of old punk friends who were getting rid of them for next to no. But yeah, I mean, I still love their clothes today, but it does grate with me a bit. You know, I want it to be like. I was a very conscientious punk rocker, but I'm wearing expensive clothes, and it's.
Is that top you're wearing? Is that a seditionary top?
This is a parachute shop.
Yeah.
Shirt. You know, no one's seen clothes like this before.
Yeah.
But it makes me feel a bit of a fraud in a way, I suppose, wearing expensive clothes. But I mean, I didn't pay a great deal for a lot of them, but it's not part of the DIY culture. And that DIY culture was fantastic as well, because it showed.
Cutting up bin bags.
Well, it wasn't just bin bags. I mean, it was art in its way. You know, you get a load of clothes, deconstruction, which is a lot of what this is based on. You know, get items of clothing and cut sleeves off here and put them on something else, and you know, create something new out of something existing. And that's part of the anarchy thing as well. You know, you're taking what you've got and deconstructing life. So whatever building, it's not about destroying it. It's destroying things in a term, but recreating
repurposing it.
In your own, I mean,
yeah.
that was the whole anarchy thing. Personal anarchy in mind. The anarchy was destroying, but really replacing it with something better. So that's a lot of the punk ethics was about. You know, creating in your own vision. You know, destroying what exists and creating it in your own vision. That's what.
So what you were doing was buying the clothes that were designed and made by somebody else who had that vision of how to change things. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think that's...
It's the price that's the
Well, it was a price, and okay, they might have become mega rich and, you know...
Most people nick stuff from their shops, you know.
They might have become mega rich and it might have been overpriced, but in a way, you know, artists have got to survive. They can only do what they want to do if somebody will support them. I mean, this is the myth. Artists aren't rich, you know, when they start out. A lot of them, you know, especially in the history of art, a lot of artists, you know, die in poverty. You know, they're not recognised in their lifetime. I mean, I think that's what's different these days, because you're only seen as successful if you're earning a massive amount of money, and if you're earning a massive amount of money, that means you're endorsed. That means it's good, you know, which isn't the case, is it? That isn't the case at all. You know, there's all in other times, right up until the present, you made money because. Sorry, you didn't make money. You know, your genius or whatever it was. Not that I'm a big fan of this idea of genius, but it used to go unrecognised. I mean, you know, I've heard all those stories. I remember a story about Miro, this Spanish artist called Miro, who did all these abstract paintings. You know, and he was in his early career. A lot of his images came out of the hallucinations that he used to have because he was hungry, because he didn't have enough money for food.
Yeah.
You know, that's a million miles away from the successful artists these days.
Yeah.
But I don't know when you run about success. Success to me seems things. If it's got no monetary value, it's got no value in a capitalist society. But the capitalist society is all about selling things, so they devalue what you try to do anyway. And if they can sell it for loads of money to the people who don't really understand what they're buying, you know. I'm not saying this.
But you did understand what you were buying.
I think the problem with the Vivian Westwood stuff, the traditional stuff, was the price. But you've highlighted the counter argument. You know, these people, the quality clothes, a lot of effort went in, and you know they're really well
and
made.
you were valuing that art.
I was valuing it, yeah.
It's like people buying things in here. It's, you know, we don't really want to sell them. We don't really want to have to charge artists. But unfortunately, we wouldn't exist if we don't charge them a little bit. And you know, we have to try and sell their work because.
That keeps them going.
That keeps them going. That keeps them making things and encourages them. You know, because they might not be able to afford to do it otherwise. You know, it's like money. You can't take money out of the equation. It's all wrapped up, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
But where good art, I mean, good art is, you know, what's good art, what's bad art.
Well, we're deviating a little bit from, because we want the third item you recommended. We're going into the philosophy of art and patronage and subscription and value.
Yeah.
Those are all things that, like Johna values those clothes, and they are worth that because they're valuable to him. Yeah. So that, you know, when we're setting the terms, but we have to do that process because we live under capitalism, and that's central of it.
Wouldn't have been able to make her clothes
without born.
Well, she didn't have a lot of money at that point.
No,
that's right.
That's
right.
That's
They made all out of the punk stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think. It was only when rich people found out about it.
Yeah.
All I don't know whether that was the motivation for it. But
yeah, that's the great thing. That's the great thing about art, because once the actual the creative impulse, whatever it might be, is unleashed into the world, then people will determine what it's worth to them. You know, and value it like that. But a lot of stuff that is valuable never gets seen, never gets never has commercial success until the artist's dead, and somebody else then decides that we can make something out of it. But that's a separate question. Let's get to the last item of recommendation.
Okay, well, I've been around the houses with this. I mean, there are bands that I've liked. I mean, I don't know. There have been things that have influenced me. That, I don't know, somewhere along the line, I think I've changed my attitude towards loads of things that I used to think were brilliant. You know, probably musically, the only thing that I've never become disillusioned with was New Order. I love New Order right from the start, and I've always loved them, always. But I mean, that's not. I think if I was going to say something about the art thing, because I feel like I need to say something about the art. The art recently, and I think more and more and more, I've come to appreciate art that was medieval art. That's my thing at the moment. I know this is a bit of a, you know, you're asking me to recommend somebody, but I would something to somebody. But what I'd really like is to encourage people to go back and look at the way painters painted before the Renaissance came along. Lots of it's religious, which can put people off, but the way it looks, the way it's done, the view that it represents, there's something really magical about it, and I'm really, really influenced by that at the moment. There's something very unpolished about it. It's not realistic, it doesn't look real, but the colours in it, the emotion in it, it was sort of, it's almost like art was taken over by, oh, you know, everything's got to look exactly like it does in the real world, and you know, you've got to have your perspective lines all lined up and blah, blah, blah. But in the Renaissance, art really changed. Right. And I think there's something really special about the art that was made before that. It was very ornate, it was very patterned, very, I don't know, very straight from the imagination rather than, you know, just, it didn't really particularly reflect the real world. It was about, you know, what was going on in people's minds.
Right, so yeah.
You know, and it represented their emotional response to what they were imagining.
Yeah. And that's what period is that then?
So we're talking probably, well, anything. I mean, this is the problem I've got because there's so many different periods. There's early medieval, there's the illuminated manuscripts, which I love. I think they're just gorgeous. You know, where you have the text and then you have these images down the side, you know, and sort of they're all inlaid with gold, and they're absolutely beautiful. They're mind-blowing. So there's early Renaissance, and then there's later on there's, you know, the Italians that used to paint on the walls with frescoes and all that stuff.
Brilliant.
And I mean, it sort of, it sneaks back into art throughout, especially from about the beginning of the 20th century. You had the pre-Raphael Brotherhood, and then you had, you know, sort of modernism started to come out of that symbolism. Oh, anyway, I don't want to get too technical, but I just love the way they look. They're just
unmediated sort of art.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're unmediated by any sort of intellectualism. They're just basically what people saw in their minds and put down on
freestyle.
Sort of, a sort of freestyle.
Painting punk rock, it sounds like to me, John.
I haven't described that very well at all. I've never tried.
I think,
Was that all right?
Yeah, I think it's fine. Well, thanks for that. Brilliant.